I don't know. Sometimes the thinking of the ANC and the policies they've come up with are so 18th century. We've got Nigeria, Rwanda, Mauritius connected already, and many others. I think about another 17 others looking to be joined up, many by in the next month or so. But of course, South Africa is just, quote, service date unknown at this time, for which one must read never. Really, it's the one-liner. For Starlink to operate in South Africa, they require applicants or licensees to have a minimum 30% equity ownership held by persons from historically disadvantaged groups, for which read ANC members. So I guess we will never receive it unless that law is changed. I've written to him. I've asked him if he's prepared to consider that in light of this development, and I have yet to receive a reply, and I'm not holding my breath.
Well, it's very appropriate music, very new age stuff. We're going to be talking with Diane Kohler-Barnard. She is the Democratic Alliance's Shadow Minister of Communications. It's all about Starlink. Now, you are on this in Parliament. What exactly has been the reaction of the ANC to this really crazy decision that it's got to try and impose its rules? Well, I suppose it's cadre enrichment policies that is going to stop something that's happening pretty much everywhere else in Africa.
Well, that's exactly it. And the minister's response has been fascinating. Bear in mind, it was his response to my parliamentary question that I have quoted throughout, that they would require to have, as a licensee, to have a minimum of 30% equity ownership held by persons from historically disadvantaged groups. Now, what company is going to come here and hand over 30%? I know the ANC have tried for years. They tried to sneak through a 50% ownership at one stage. I managed to stop that at the last hurdle. But there's this 30% equity ownership. And the minister is, it's got nothing to do with me. No, it's ICASA. Well, he's only been the minister for 3 minutes, but all of the communications ministers, there's a history that they appear at every single portfolio committee meeting, even though they're not really invited. They oversee what is presented by everyone. There are like 14, 15 entities, some are amalgamating, under the Department of Communications. Their staff summarize the reports by these entities so that it's just one long presentation, and they cherry pick their way through those reports. So my colleague and I, Cholo Botlande and I, we go through those reports very carefully, and we pick out everything that we know they won't include in their so-called summary. So it's a nonsense, an absolute nonsense that he doesn't know what's going on, and he doesn't know what the impact will be. This Starlink is something that every business is saying it would be an absolute game changer. Finally, we'd have reliable internet to do business. They want to start up businesses. They don't have reliable internet. And this would really assist when it comes to employment massively. And again, as I recall, I wrote in my statement, imagine all the children in far-flung areas where there is no connectivity. They have no links to schools, to universities, to job applications. There's nothing. And suddenly this could be working for them. But no, the ANC have stopped them at the first hurdle.
We need to unpack it a little bit. Yeah. Elon Musk grew up in Pretoria.
Yes.
He's gone on to be a global entrepreneur, the richest man in the world. He's got a mind that is, I suppose, has made him the richest man in the world. And he has a company, we all know Tesla, but he has a company called SpaceX, which is revolutionizing space travel. And, well, the whole space, we shouldn't say space travel, but the whole business of space. And he's putting satellites into space. He promises to put something like 40,000 of them that will be very low orbiting to the Earth, which would then transmit. At the moment, people are getting between 30 megs and 100 megs of internet, which is much faster than you get in most instances in South Africa, transmits that back into any part of the world, including this country. Now, South Africa is 0.5% of global GDP. So if South Africa puts down stupid rules, you can be pretty sure that he's going to say, well, okay, let's just miss out in South Africa. So how do we just get the message through to those who feel that they can they can take a little slice of yet another multinational's pie, that the multinational is just not going to do the business in this case.
Well, I think, the way I've managed over the 19 years I've been in Parliament is I name and shame, and I open the cans of worms and shake them out. And immediately, as you saw with the minister and others, they'll immediately start trying to turn it around, that somehow this is my fault, which of course is an absolute nonsense. It's his question, his answer to my question, that has shown the world what is really happening. South Africa used to be the number one country on this continent. We are losing our places month by month, frankly, as other countries overtake us. And this would be one of the reasons. They have this magnificent internet at a magnificent speed, and we have load shedding. That's all we have. We have nothing else to offer but load shedding. So our businesses are collapsing. People are spending fortunes on alternative energy sources. And of course, Telkom, same thing, Eskom, are doing their utmost to block the usage of the alternative energy sources and to make people pay for the right to have their own energy sources. It's a bizarre situation. It's as though the ANC government are working against the people of South Africa. And in this instance, it is catastrophic for us.
Why?
Well, because we're not coping with the load shedding issue. Businesses are not coping, or they are having to spend enormous amounts on generators, enormous amounts on diesel. And slowly but surely, companies are going bankrupt because of this. And absolutely nothing has been done. And when you read what Andre de Ruyter said in the hearings yesterday, that the amounts of money being looted through Eskom, it's inconceivable. Instead of being plowed back into the country, building the schools, building the universities, building the houses, fixing the roads, it's going into people's pockets. And that's what we're talking about. Anybody who imagines for 1 microsecond that the people that 30% of this company would go to would be anyone who's ever seen anything of being an underdeveloped person and somehow disadvantaged, has no idea how South Africa works. It will simply go to more cadres, and frequently fronted by their own staff at home. I mean, it's laughable that they would expect a company such as that owned by Elon Musk to simply hand over 30%. For what? So he can do this country a favor? Absolutely not. It's inconceivable.
Have you looked into Starlink much and the likely penetration of other African countries? Let's just say South Africa doesn't get it,
yeah,
which appears to be the ANC's intention. How much of a disadvantage would we be at, because would everybody else around us have it?
Yes, I think that's exactly it. And this is why we're falling behind, and they are shooting upwards. Starlink allows internet coverage at extremely high speeds in very remote areas, because of course it's by satellite. And I don't care what you think about Elon Musk, but it is an amazing innovation, and it should be rolled out here, but it's being rolled out. I think he's got it currently heading for 4,500 satellites, and it's just the most extraordinary service that we're now turning our nose up to. It's I don't know. Sometimes the thinking of the ANC and the policies they've come up with are so 18th century. We've got Nigeria, Rwanda, Mauritius connected already, and many others. I think about another 17 others looking to be joined up, many in the next month or so. But of course, South Africa is just, quote, service date unknown at this time, for which one must read never. Really, it's the one-liner. For Starlink to operate in South Africa, they require applicants or licensees to have a minimum 30% equity ownership held by persons from historically disadvantaged groups, for which read ANC members. So I guess we will never receive it unless that law is changed. I've written to him. I've asked him if he's prepared to consider that in light of this development, and I have yet to receive a reply, and I'm not holding my breath.
Didn't Zimbabwe have something similar, which they abandoned?
In all honesty, I don't know what's happening in Zimbabwe. I don't know. The only thing I do know is that when I've been there, 4 or 5 times during the so-called elections, with Robert Mugabe getting in, even though he lost, there was a very extensive, as it were, telecommunications system in the country run by the Chinese. But even that, I believe, has now been abandoned. So I can't tell you what the status is in Zimbabwe.
But the status here in South Africa is, unless Elon Musk gives 30% of the business to ANC influenced, or the people that the ANC wants him to give it to, then Starlink will not operate in South Africa. And Elon Musk has said flatly he refuses. He absolutely refuses to participate in any of this, which he has, I don't know if he said it specifically, but he certainly has intimated, believes to be corruption.
Well, yes. I mean, I think many of us, myself included, had huge hopes with the Zondo Commission. We had been banging that drum for years about the corruption in virtually every single entity in South Africa. And it was all out there for everyone to see, everyone to hear about the suitcases filled with money leaving state security, about which ministers were involved, who is still involved, who was promoted because they know something about someone else who was involved. Everywhere in every single entity of South Africa, there's corruption. So to presume now, suddenly, South Africa would simply stop, you're living in cloud cuckoo land if you believe that will happen, until such time as we see the people behind the looting, as revealed at the Zondo Commission, officially. I mean, we've revealed it till the cows come home, but it's now by the Zondo Commission. Until we see people going to jail, until we see the money coming back into the national coffers. What was it for? It was years of interviews and nothing's come out of it. And I fear this falls into the same category. Is if there's nothing in it for someone, that no one's interested. And what would it do in this country? It would allow people in the furthest corners of this country who have absolutely no access to anything to get access. And we're also talking that sort of access can mean internet banking, can assist with, the collapsing SASA grant issues. It's endless, the solutions that the Starlink satellites could reveal to us, and yet it is being blocked at that level because there's no kickback for the friends.
I'm going to throw two things at you. First of all, Starlink has helped enormously in the Ukraine war.
Yes.
On the not Russian side. No. We know that Russia is very close to the ANC. Could that have had any influence in this application or this insanity, which there's no other way of really describing it, the way that the ANC is keeping this innovation away from the country?
When the ANC initially, Naledi Pandor put out a statement, she initially damned the Russians for invading a sovereign nation. And within a few minutes, it was pulled down, and suddenly they were putting up one saying, oh, we're not getting involved and we can't criticize Russia, because Russia obviously reacted very strongly when their so-called allies dared to call them out on the invasion of a sovereign nation. For Elon Musk to have stood up like that and taken a stand and supplied that to protect the Ukraine, I think, well, good on him. I mean, our thought process on the entire situation is out there, and we've been very open that one can't protect a nation that has invaded a sovereign nation. What if Mozambique invaded South Africa? Are we supposed to sit back and say, oh, no, our colleagues and our friends and around the world mustn't say anything because they shouldn't be commenting? It's an absolute nonsense, this protection of Russia. And I think Elon Musk did exactly the right thing.
I'm asking something very different. We know from the IEC that Vexelberg, who's an oligarch very close to Putin, owns a big platinum operation, manganese operation in South Africa, and that he gave the ANC 15 million rand in the last submission. So it's there in black and white. We also know that South Africa is a member of BRICS and that Putin is reputedly going to be coming to South Africa despite the arrest warrant. It appears more and more that in geopolitics, South Africa is choosing to side with Russia. And if Russia is very cross with Elon Musk and Starlink, which it is because of the role that it's played in the Ukraine war, might that have had an influence in all of this?
I've no doubt. I've absolutely no doubt. The ANC is 100% in bed with Russia and China. If they just scratch the surface of those countries, the human rights abuses are so massive. One wonders how they could even imagine it. But it's to some extent historical, where some ANC members went into exile into Russia, and so they feel they owe them to some extent. But where does one finally draw the line with that historical precedent? To now that the International Criminal Court, 1 minute, oh no, we're leaving that. And now, as of, I think, last night, the president said, no, actually, no, that was wrong. Got it wrong, read it wrongly. We're not. They're in an absolute mess about it. And, of course, they know if Putin comes here, we're going to have the same drama we had previously when someone with massive charges globally standing, waiting to get them up, invited in the front door and then hustled out the back door so no one can pick them up. So yes, I've no doubt.
Well,
no doubt.
Parallels are there with al-Bashir,
yes,
and al-Bashir was kicked. Well, he was overthrown by a military coup not very long
exactly.
afterwards. But the other issue, and the big issue that most South Africans are asking now, is why are the opposition parties not able to get a united front together? It's almost like there's a death wish from the opposition fighting amongst each other. You've got the ANC that is really, really shooting itself in both feet continuously. And the Starlink story is another example. And why is it that the DA and the Patriotic Alliance and the Freedom Front, et cetera, and the IFP, I mean, we're a very big player, very important player here. Why can't they all get together and have a united front and actually make a difference in this country? We're hearing on the ground that people are saying, well, why bother to even go and vote? And if you do go and vote, why bother not voting for the ANC? Because the opposition are just as bad.
Well, if you recall, when Helen Zille won Cape Town, it was with a very rickety coalition. I think there were 6 other parties, which today seems minuscule compared to the numbers we're dealing with today. And eventually, and slowly but surely, we got to a stage where we win the metro outright, purely because of the service delivery successes. And one must understand and it is far be it for me to talk on behalf of John Steenhuisen, but from his presentations and various meetings and indeed our Congress recently, one must understand that every political party is out for itself, and people will criticize when the DA wins something and says that they've won a metro. Oh, but you should have given credit to the other 7 parties involved. But then when they say it, they don't give credit to every other party, because every other party has a leader who believes they should be leading the country. And it's always going to be very difficult to manage those egos. But one agreement we came to is that we will always stick to our personal principles, which is why we said we will never go into coalition with the EFF. We cannot go into coalition with a party that does nothing more than race baiting and destroys entities. Now, if there is a party that we believe is literally for sale and has no principles that tie in with ours, there's going to be a difficulty in keeping it together in an alliance. And sometimes, frankly, recently things are moving and parties are coming into the coalition and agreeing, okay, this is your space, this is mine. But for someone to come in with a handful of seats and demand massive positions, it happens all the time, and it's a hugely difficult task to get the balance right. And we've worked very well with the IFP in many areas. There's no issue there, and usually there's no issue with pretty much all of them that are moderates. But if there's one that is beyond the pale and really does things that go against our tenets as the DA, how can we possibly? Can we put those aside? Must we put those aside because we think we should be running things, and because this one person with two seats could swing it? That's the big debate that has to be held and is held regularly in our party, and that's what it's all about. We can't sell ourselves in exchange for position. It can never happen, because what's left in the end? Once you start selling your policies down the drain, what's left?
Diane Kohler-Barnard is the Shadow Minister of Communications with the Democratic Alliance, and I'm Alec Hogg from biznews.com.